The opening scenes of Hellbound have us witnessing these monstrous, otherworldly beings hunting and then killing a mass murderer, and a lot of the killing that resemble the one that came before are all those of extremely amoral or even immoral people. And so the logic goes, if we can't understand the events taking place, they must be the work of a god. It's in that belief that religious cults rise up and cement the idea that the only way that such violence can be justified is if it is in service of an all-knowing eternal being. But what constitutes amorality in the eyes of this society is not very clear, and rightfully so, because the cultists who commit acts of violence in service of God can do so without judgment or condemnation as long as they are doing so against people who they themselves have deemed to be evil. But since their creed is one that glorifies a God who encourages untold violence and brutality without cause, usually the ones who the cultists deem evil aren't those who murder, rape, or steal, but those who disagree with that ideology. The evil acts that the cultists would commit in the name of their god quickly make it clear that there is something more at play than what we've been initially told. This feeling first manifests itself when we learn in the third episode that the leader of the religious cultists received a decree claiming that he will die in 20 years. In Hellbound, an otherworldly face of an angel appears before the victim and declares that they will die in X amount of time. And when that time arrives, a trio of monsters appear and brutally tears them apart until they are nothing more than a burnt carcass on the side of the road. While the first 3 episodes explore the moral dynamics of how people come to terms with events they do not fully understand and how religion plays into that, it is the final 3 that really alter the fundamental framework of what we've been shown by blurring the lines and putting everyone's beliefs into question. On a smaller scale, we're shown that the followers of God aren't really all that good, or even just in how they interpret good and evil, and if the violence and brutality did not tip you off, they're also extremely corrupt when it comes to attaining and maintaining the power they've gained from making people afraid. On a larger scale, the decrees that play a fundamental role in driving the story forward and keeping us engaged start to feel so random that one cannot deny the fact that morality no longer has anything to do with it. Except for the attorney Min-Ye-jin, who is by far my favorite character in the entire show, the core characters change in the latter half. The last few episodes is Hellbound at its most metatextually introspective, mulling over the questions we all have and letting the characters find the answers we need. The revelation that the decrees and the deaths are not religious condemnations and rather just supernatural disasters completely upends everything, destroying any and all preconceived notions of religious intervention. But just because the show rejects that conclusion, it doesn't mean it's accepting the other. We're still not at all clear as to how these events came to be, or even what the new world will look like once we've established that religion plays no part in these judgments. I guess we have to ask ourselves, do we prefer a world ruled by an all-knowing God where our actions are judged on a whim, or do we want a godless world where the very thought of a non-existent God compels people to act in ways that do not cater to those moral standards? Either way, we're screwed. Hellbound is a tightly written thrill ride that posits very interesting questions on the difference between good and evil, but its take on those themes is not as nuanced as it could have been. It was always the overly religious that seemed to commit acts that were cruel and unforgivable, and the rest of society were either indifferent or just victims of their abuse. I wanted to see at least one non-religious person acting just as vile as the other side, and vice versa. But taken as it is, this was one of the best Korean dramas in recent memory, and the writing, cinematography, and acting is exactly why you should watch Hellbound.